Welcome to Connected, where no topic is off topic. I am your host, Kimberly Dam. Today, we are talking about the most overused phrase, self-love. Yes, God, self-love, right? Self-love and spiritual journeys. It's kind of like shit happened and these are the podcasts type of thing. I mean, nobody really arrives to self-love unless you've realized that nobody can really love you the way that you need to be loved. So you better source it yourself. It's quite funny. I don't know, at least that's how I think. But yeah, I guess I'm just going to dive right into it because I'm feeling very like fiery and airy right now. Self-love to me is basically just returning to the essence of who you are, which is spirit. So, self-love is not based upon personality traits. It is not based upon physical appearance. It's not based upon intellectual attainment or character. I guess, is there any such thing as intellectual characteristics? I mean, I guess there is such thing as intellectual characteristics, but it's not based on any of those. It is literally based on everything that you were before you literally came out of the womb. Because you are love, you were made from love. And yeah, so to me, self-love is just returning to that. It's honoring the essence that you are, that basically makes up the life. It's really just honoring the life that's within you. It's honoring the God that is within you, the spirit essence that is within you. You can love in addition to that, yes, you can filter that out. You can continue that externally. You can love you can love your personality and you can love what you look like and you can love your intellect, but you cannot base your love for yourself upon those things because I assure you that those things will change. Everything will change. It's the only constant, right? So that to me is what self-love is. Obviously if you float around on social media, self-love is kind of depicted and portrayed in a lot of different ways. It's portrayed in emotional abuse. It's portrayed in arrogance. It's portrayed in pampering, treat yourself mentality type of thing. It's just portrayed it in a lot of different ways. And there is one thing that I would like to touch on. I think, so many times the reason why a lot of people misinterpret the idea of self-love is because we say, oh, do this, do this. There's so many things that you gotta do. I just need to put this out there. We as humans love to fucking overcomplicate things. And what is incredibly funny is if we just bring everything back to the awareness that is sitting within this vessel that is our body, if we really just bring our attention to the awareness that is that, then everything is really fucking simple. Like if you think about it, it's just, we get all up, instead of like living in our heart and chakra and down, we live very up in our heads. We take mental approaches to everything. So as with like the whole idea that, well, you're not spiritual unless you do A, B, C, and D. We do the same with self-love. Well, you don't really love yourself unless you do A, B, and C, and D. So it doesn't look like that though. But unfortunately, we get very focused because we're like, oh, I want to attain, unfortunately, as humans, we're very, we're very driven. We're driven by achievement. We want to attain. And so we think that, if we pamper ourselves, if we get in the bathtub, if we do yoga, if we meditate, if we write affirmations, if we do all these things, then that is going to bring us closer to loving ourselves. And really, while that can all help, it's really not necessary. It's really just like you're almost like stressing yourself out with all of these things that you think that you have to do to basically just return back to you. Like, does that make sense? So, yeah, I try myself not to get caught up in that. I basically just do what I feel. I think that the biggest portion of my own self love journey that has been really like eye opening, the piece that I was missing, I guess I could say, because generally speaking, don't hate me. Okay, don't hate me when I say this. I've always, for the most part, felt pretty comfortable in my skin. Now, that does not mean that I have at all been 100% or 150% or 200% satisfied with the way that my body or my face or my hair looks. Like, that is not what that means. What I mean is, I kind of, I have, I in some ways have just felt comfortable with who I was. And I almost kind of feel like I was born that way. Um, like it's almost just kind of like I knew who I was. And even though certain aspects of myself were definitely formed, through conditioning and through my childhood, I just always have felt okay in my skin. I just, it like, if you understand what I'm saying, it's more like on a personality level. It's not so much like what I look like because I definitely have insecurities. We all do. But so I guess what I'm saying is my personal piece of self-love that I have been kind of putting back into the pie, putting the piece back into the pie to kind of feel um more loved for myself is really honoring my feelings and accepting where I've been emotionally. Honestly, just overall acceptance. I think that, but for me, accepting where I have been emotionally, like that's not something that I really have done. I've kind of I danced for years, and so to some extent with dancing you always run up against your body's limitations. And so to some extent I felt like I was very accepting of my physical form in some ways. you know, Obviously I would love to take a little bit of cellulite out of my ass, but again, that's according to what we as society see as beauty, so I'm just trying to match myself to an ideal. Blah 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 blah, right? But in terms of my biggest problem is that I have always kind of suppressed my feelings and then I really haven't honored them for myself. And the whole idea behind self-love is to just accept yourself as for who you are. It's just accepting yourself as you are in any given moment. And that to me has been a tremendous gift. I'm not saying that I don't struggle with it. I certainly do. There are many conversations that I have with my friends where I feel like I should be further along in my career or in my life, or I should be able to do A, B, C, and D, or there's always something that I feel that I'm doubting or ways in which I can do better in the self-love and in the self-acceptance department. But for me it's been incredibly healing and also incredibly eye-opening, just in the realization that I've just never really given myself permission to feel and to feel fully and just to allow myself to be there. And so um that's just, my personal struggle. That's been something that has been a challenge for me. And luckily, I was able to encounter, um, I actually just encountered somebody who was able to really hold space for me. And it was amazing. She's a very dear friend of mine. And I remembered I was actually at a kirtan. I just love telling this story because I think it's important to share for anybody else that notices ways in which they block love. But I was at a kirtan and there was, if you don't know what a kirtan is, it is basically like a drum circle. Sometimes there's chanting, sometimes it's just drums, sometimes it's other instruments. and sometimes there's also dancing. Well, I was just primarily sitting there and chanting, and they were playing music. And there was this one chant that required really like heavy drums. And drums are like percussion has always been a huge passion of mine. I love it. Like it just inherently feels so good in my body. Um, and so it really shook me. Like I remembered feeling it in my chest, and I got emotional. And this was a kind of like a not a new friend. We had known each other for some time, but it was kind of like after this instance that our friendship really deepened. And so she was sitting beside me, and I just started to cry. And I've never really felt comfortable crying in front of anybody. And I have rarely done it like on my own. I mean, I have, obviously, but rarely. And if I have cried on my own, I've always tried to hurry myself out of it, move on, start thinking more positively. And so what happened was I started to have an emotional response. I basically started crying, and she put her arm around me and she pulled me in. Now, this friend of mine is significantly younger than me, like significantly younger. And, the majority of my life, I've kind of always felt responsible for like everybody that I was around. So it was very different for me to be nurtured by somebody that was younger than me. I've always kind of played the mom role. And so it was just really uncomfortable. And I remembered, so she pulled me in, and my thought process was exactly that. My thought process was like, no, you need to get your shit together. You're the older one. You shouldn't be behaving this way. You should be being strong for her, even though she was completely fine. She's not the one having an emotional breakdown in the middle of a kirtan. So, that's where my mind goes, is I'm just like, no, like that was my block. That was my block to love. I just started intellectually blocking by making up all of these rationalizations, all of these illogical rules. And it was then that, she had shown so much compassion and love towards me. And what was really interesting is I did not push away from her, but I was very aware of what was going on in my head. And so, she released me and we returned back to the kirtan. And then after the kirtan, I had shared my experience with her. And I said to her, I noticed that this came up. And so what was interesting is her reflecting back to me that she could hold space for me. And it was almost like, even though I had experienced the block, I had also acknowledged it and moved past it. And then that gave me, it's like by me letting her love in, I was able to realize that I I can do that for myself. I was able to realize, I'm sorry, I might get a little emotional. I was able to realize that that's okay. That it's okay to to be sad. It's okay to have emotional responses. It's okay to feel. It's okay. My idea, I was raised with the idea that strength was pushing on. Strength was pushing forward. There wasn't a lot of time for healing when I was a kid. And so that was like honestly, like that was just like a huge marker in my journey to self-love. It was just like I felt like that was a massive turning point, because it was after that I just really was able to start holding space for myself when I was feeling whatever I was feeling, whether it be completely elated joy or, very deep sorrow. And so I guess, that is that's really honestly what I'm still working on it, but I feel like that's kind of been like the biggest piece missing from my self-love pie, so to speak. God, I don't know why I always defer things to to food and desserts. It's really embarrassing. Um, so anyway, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you because I think so many of us we do have blocks to love, and I definitely want to venture that and discuss that in another episode. But it's just thank God she was able to reflect the love that was already within me by just holding space and having compassion. And there was no fixing. There was no, she wasn't rushing in to change the situation at all. Like that was the beauty of it, right? Because so many of us do that. Like we see somebody else in distress and we want to change their emotional state. And she was just able to hold space. And I learned. I learned from her that that's something that I could start providing for myself, and not that I always had to, but it was also really interesting because I also realized that I can have that from another person. And I've never really felt that way before. It's not necessarily that it hasn't been offered to me. I'm sure that it has, but I blocked it. But it was in that moment that I was able to recognize that block and that I was able to move into a firmer, more expansive space of self love was by me dropping that block and just accepting her love. And then I was able to move into a space where I then came to my realizations over what I identified as strength and weakness and what I, defined as healing and just emotional response. So it was really, really important, or it was really, really just eye-opening, I guess is what I want to say. So anyway, yeah. So, again, you can do whatever it is that you need to do to return to yourself. I like to participate in, it's kind of like I hate when people are like, oh, take a bath. But the reason why people always propose bath is the reason why people always propose baths and other things of the like is because it is a way of tapping into your senses. And when you tap into your senses, you tap into your physical body. And when we tap into our physical body, we remember that, there is a physicality to us, but there's also a feeling aspect to us too. And that spirit is vital in that. So, yeah, so I really think though that self-love is just returning to the essence and just accepting yourself where you are. I feel like that's the most basic way of kind of coming into self-love. I don't think baths are necessary. I don't think yoga is necessary. I don't think working out is necessary. I don't think eating healthy is necessary. Those are all, again, sensual activities that help you be more mindful and more sensual and yeah, in some ways feed your spirit, whatever brings you joy, but it's again not necessary. So I just want to reiterate a million times that we just kind of overcomplicate things and we don't need to do that. So there's nothing that you need to achieve in order to attain self-love. You just have to remember who you are. Okay, guys, but I did want to share that experience with you. Again, or I don't even know if I've stated this, but I meant to. Anything that I share with you in these podcasts, if I speak of them as being the truth, they are not necessarily the truth. They are my truth. It is all based on my experience. And I always encourage other people to use discernment and their own intuition when standing in their own. So, anyway, I'm going to end this here. I love you, and I hope that you are having a marvelous day. And I hope that you stay connected.